Hi everybody, this is Lil Frenchie. I'm about to do my first watercolor tutorial for you. I've decided to do this photograph that I took. A coworker of mine gave me that at work, and I decided I've already done a painting like that before. I thought it would be good that you could do it too. First, I'm going to draw it out. So when you're doing watercolor, you need to remember that watercolor is kind of loosey-goosey. Nothing has to be exact. I hear a lot of people who tell me that I can't do art because I can't even draw a stick figure. Well, luckily for you with watercolor, you don't even need to know how to do a stick figure because watercolor is very loose and free, and so nothing has to be exactly precise. So when I'm usually doing a photograph, I'm trying to do an impressionistic view of what I'm seeing. And sometimes I add a little extra to make it a little bit more appealing to the eye. Now, as you can see, I just did the base of the vase. It's not 100% accurate, and that's okay. I also did a light drawing of where I'm going to put the stems. In the center I'm going to be putting the leaves, and here is where I'm going to be putting all the lilac flowers. When I paint, you really only need 4 colors: a blue, a red, a yellow, and a brown. You can choose warm and cool, and you can mix those up between the reds, yellows, and blues. You could pick whatever you like. My favorite brushes to use are a size 8 and a size 4. With watercolors, quality matters. It's really hard to get the results you want if you have a really poor product. I found that out the hard way. I will go on later on and tell you what I used in the comments below. First I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit. I'm going to make a gray. So you take some water and you put it in your paints. Mine are dry, as this is my little travel kit that I like to have when I do my painting. And I'm not sure if you can see this. I'm going to lift up my camera, but that's my water. It's got clear water, and then for cleaning you can have 2 containers. This one is just convenient for when I'm painting, and I like it, and it was cheap. Use my Joann's half-off coupon for it, which makes it even better. I've found that when you're watercoloring, the best thing to do is to make your own grays and blacks. And so I'm going to go in here and do some wet on wet. I'm going to take some of the wet and put it in here. So this is glass. You're not going to have a lot of color in it just because it is glass. And so I'm just kind of filling it in a little bit. What's nice about watercolor is it's forgiving. So if you don't like what you're doing, you just wipe it off when it's wet. And I thought that the reason I just wiped that off, it was just a little bit too gray for me, and I want more of a blue hue, and I'm going to put that in there. I'm spreading it out, putting it on there. Now when I'm doing these, you can either let it dry or use a heat gun or a dryer to dry these and make it quicker. When it's wet like this, you need to really wait until it's dry, unless you want the wet on wet technique. So I'm going to go in, and this might seem elementary to you, but to make purple is blue and red. When you decide to use your red and your yellow and your blues, it's best to just use the 3 instead of getting 4 or 5 of their colors in there. It tends to muddy things up. So I'm taking some pink, and then I'm going to take the original blue that I was using to make my gray and add some of that to make purple. And I'm looking at my photo, and I kind of drew it on here, but I'm going to just start putting dabs of where I want the lilacs to be while it's wet. I'm just going to go in there and kind of just dab where you feel like you want these lilacs to be. Now what I like to do is do like a base layer watercolors. You're going to start from light to dark, so as you go on, you're going to layer more and more colors to it. It's easier to add more than to take away colors with watercolor. It's hard to cover up spots that were darker to make them lighter again. It's a little bit more, it's doable, but it's a little bit more difficult. Now in my picture, I don't have quite as many flowers and they're not as pointy, but this is my interpretation, and usually when you do an interpretation, it's just better that way. So I'm putting this layer on of flowers. I'm gonna let that dry, and I'm gonna work on the green. Now I'm gonna use that same blue as I used before. Put some over here, and then always use a paper towel for your brush. And then I'm going to take this bright yellow. This is more of a cool yellow to make the green I want. Now you can add more color to make it more water to make it lighter, and you can just add. And then I'm just going to put leaves in here wherever I feel like it. Now they can be as loosey, they don't have to be exact. That's the beauty of watercolor, because watercolor isn't necessarily need to be exact. It can be an interpretation. That's the beauty of watercolor. Now I started watercolor because I liked the way it looks. I had a friend of mine, she introduced me to it and said I should try it. I grew up, my dad was an oil painter, and he had me do my first oil paintings when I was 6. Now he was an avid Bob Ross watcher, and he really encouraged me to paint, and that was something that we did together. When I tried watercolor, it's the opposite of doing oils. Oils you do dark to light, so you start darker and then you eventually add on your lighter colors. So it was hard for me to get used to. I just want to give a shout out. How I learned to do watercolor after my friend gave me my first lesson is YouTube videos. And I'd have to say the Frugal Crafter is probably an amazing artist who teaches really excellent videos. You should give her a shot and watch her videos and see what her videos can do. I watched a lot of her videos, I practiced a lot, and that's how I really learned technique on how to do watercolor. I listened to her. She gave a lot of great advice for doing it, and because of her, I have been eventually be able to do my own paintings without tutorials, and I really, really liked her videos. I suggest that if you also want to learn some more, she's a great resource for you. So I'm adding in the green, and I'm going to go back, and I feel like I want my purple to be a little bit more bluish, so I'm going to add more blue to the purple that I have. And I'm going to go in there and accent the flowers that I've done. Now some of it might still be a little bit wet, and that's okay, and you can see how the paint kind of blends out as you're painting. Now if you mess up, you can always wipe it off with the paper towel like I showed you before. But sometimes, just like Bob Ross says, sometimes they're just happy little accidents, and with watercolor it's even more forgiving than oil. You can just say, oh yeah, that's totally meant to be there. Now I'm just going to go through because I want these flowers to have a little bit more depth, and I'm just might put a little bit purple here and there just to give it a little bit more pop than what is actually in the photograph. It doesn't have to be exact, but this is what I choose to do. Now I kind of let my colors dry a little bit as I go through, and now I want my greens to have a little bit more shading to them, so I'm going to add a little bit more blue back to my green to make it darker. And then I'm going to layer this color kind of with the leaves so there's a little bit more depth in here. Now when I'm going through, you can see that I'm not, I'm not overcomplicating it. You could just go in there and just kind of layer the colors in there. You could do however you want. I'm making the lighter on top because I'm, in my mind, light's reflecting down on it, but you could do it the other way. However you feel is a good way to do it. Now I want to add a little bit of more color to these lilacs. I'm going to go back and do more of a red and kind of pop that in there too to give it a little bit more color. And I'm going to water it down a little bit because I don't want it to be too dark. I'm just going to kind of go in between so you get this 3 different shades of purple. But when you do that, it gives it a nice depth. Now I use the same 2 colors, my blue and my red, and I'll put in the comments below exactly what brushes I'm using, what paper I'm using, and exactly what colors I'm using because I don't know them off the top of my head, and this is my first video. Now this little palette that you see, this is made. It was empty. I added my colors. Honestly, if you want to start watercolor, all you need are 3 colors and you need to pick. My first colors were this red, which is kind of hard to right here see with this light, this yellow, and this blue and that brown over there. Now they were amazing. They were all I needed to do my paintings. I added more because I wanted to change things up and try more complicated paintings, and I'm really glad I did. But I think if you're a beginner, you should really start with just the 4 paints. It makes things less complicated as you're going through. Now I'm going to take some of this brown and I'm just going to add just a little bit to the branches just to give it a little bit of depth here. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to give this milk jar a little bit of more depth in here. And you see how I just add just a little bit. You don't really have to know how to paint to do this. You just kind of add it, and I'm going to add just a smidgen of color right here to make it look like what it's supposed to be. Now it's filled with water, and you can see that. We don't want a floating vase. We just don't. We don't want that. So I always like to do some sort of ground or cover. And so I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to put this background in. And sometimes you just add a little bit of more water. And I'm using all the same hues. Tip that I got from the Frugal Crafter when I was listening to her. She really helps if you want to learn how to use paints and what to do, but kind of just put that in there. And then I'm going to go for this detail. I will also post a link in there for the photograph that I'm using, so if you'd like to use it as reference, you can while you're painting. But in here, you can see that there is a little cow right here in the photograph. And you're going to say, oh, Lil Frenchie, I cannot draw a cow. That's okay. You don't need to. Everything that you paint and draw is a shape. Right now, what I see is, oh, see, it's not even dry yet. See what happens when I go and I get too excited? It goes like that. I'm going to put you on hold for a second, and I'm going to use the hair dryer so I can finish this up. All right, I'm back. So I'm going to try to put this cow. Now I'm just doing this freehand, and we'll see where it goes, but he's just a basic shape, and he doesn't even have to be perfect. I'm not even going to write the words. I'm just going to give the appearance of the words on here, and it doesn't matter, because that's what watercolor is about, impressionism. Now you can get into fine detail with watercolor, but that's not what this video is about. The video is just testing it out, having fun, and seeing what you can do with watercolor. I'm feeling like this purple is a little bit boring, so I'm just going to go in here, mix this up, and just add a few more dots here and there, because I just love depth. Finish up right here. Add a little bit more, and I might even put a little bit more green in there just for a smidgen. And I feel like I just want to have a little bit of color over here. I don't know what your skill level is when it comes to art, but odd numbers always seem to appeal to the eye all the time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it wasn't appealing to me, and I put in the 7th. So whenever you're doing something, odd numbers appeal to the eye when you're doing something. Now, I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to this, just because I think I just want to maybe brighten it up a little bit here and there. Add a little, no, I don't like that. And so you can play around, and I put a thing on there, a little dot, and I'm just going to put more dark in there. That's what I was looking for. I'm just trying to get a little bit of more depth, a little bit of more appeal to the eye. And I'm almost finished, and I will add a little color here and there just for the fun of it. Alright, and there's your painting. Hopefully I will do more, and if you like this painting, click subscribe and like it. Comments are always welcome to make my videos better. This is my first one, so please be a little bit forgiving to me. And I hope you enjoyed this painting, and happy painting to you.